Mother Mary, how are you doing?
I was not there. I wasn't there. I wasn't there to see him.
I was with him the whole time. We stayed there. Joseph took his body down. We wrapped him in the finest linen. We even had time, despite the Sabbath, to prepare. We buried him in a grave. You didn't need to be there. You didn't need to see him like that.
And we don't want to remember him like that.
I'd like to tell you how I first met Jesus. I needed to get water for my household. And so I went to Jacob's well to draw water. And on my way there, I saw a man, a Jewish man, who turned out to be Jesus. And I thought, oh, no. I, being a Samaritan woman, knew that the Jews hated us. And I had come after everybody had left because I'm sort of an outcast in my town. But Jesus was accepting of me. But he asked me for a drink of water. And I said, you asking me for a drink of water? I, a Samaritan woman? He said that if I knew who he was, I would be asking him for a drink. He said, if we drink water from this well, we'll thirst again, but if I drank the water that he had, I would never thirst again. And I thought, you know, it's hot out and the heat has probably gotten to his mind, but there was something compelling about it. Something that made me listen to what he was saying. And so I asked him that if you have this living water, what are you going to draw it with? You don't have a vessel or anything, and this well is deep. And are you more important than our forebear Jacob? And he sort of had a smirk on his face, and he said, no. And I explained to him that I didn't know what he was talking about. I couldn't understand why he would be talking to me. All I knew was that we were waiting for the Messiah, and when the Messiah came, he would explain everything to us. And he said, well, what if I told you that I was the Messiah? And I thought, you know, how presumptuous of him to suggest that he was the Messiah. Prove it to me. And he said, well, okay, go get your husband and bring him back and I'll show you. And I told him, I said, well, I don't have a husband. And he said, that's right, you don't. The man that you're living with now is not your husband. Okay. In fact, you've had 5 people you've lived with and only one of them was your husband. And he named all of them. And I'm thinking, what? How could he possibly know this? And then I said, well, you are a prophet or you're the Christ, the Son of God. And he said, yes, I am the Son of God. the Messiah that we've been waiting for. And I couldn't believe it. I was excited. I wanted to believe it. But after all, this was a Jew. But there was something so compelling about him. And I said, well, yes, I would love to tell anybody that would listen. And so I just dropped my vessels and I ran back to town to tell everybody, and I brought them out so they could see that our Messiah had finally come. So I thought that you should know that, because it's a wonderful story, and I grew to love him so much.
Mary Magdalene, I know you were really close to him. How are you doing?
Without him, I wouldn't be here today. The day I met him, it was the day that I was born, truly born. I didn't have an idyllic life. My mother, she died when I was just a little girl. And I never quite lived up to my father's expectations. I wasn't like my sisters. There was no marriage, there were no children. When I looked at the things that made them happy, I just felt empty somehow. As if the world itself didn't understand me. I didn't belong. My father tried to turn me into my sisters. 15, he began to bring the suitors home. I'd come home and they'd be waiting for me, some old man waiting to take his young bride. And it just wasn't for me. I remember one day I was in the town and there was a group of men. They were celebrating something. And they beckoned to me as I walked home. And I knew that when I got home, there was yet another man waiting to take me, make me his. And they called me over and I went. And they offered me wine and we laughed. And in that moment, I felt alive. And there was a man there. And he showed me things that the virgin at home never would admit to. Things that you would all call me a whore for. The worst thing you can call a woman. But it didn't matter to me. Because I felt free. I didn't know that those moments would lead me to death. I didn't know those temptations would consume me. I remember the dreams when they started, the voices that I would hear. Darkness. Being pulled down. It felt like I was being consumed, being torn apart. And then one day, I was no more. Wandering the streets, mad, raving, naked, my body exposed to. And then one day, I heard a voice, and it called to me. And it told them to leave me. And they screamed, and then it stopped. And when I opened my eyes, I opened them up and I saw him. I didn't even know who he was. But there was light and joy, and I was reborn. So because of him, I'm here today, and I knew that the only path that I could walk was with him. And that's why I would never leave him. And I loved him. He saved me. I was reborn through him. And I know we'll be with him again. So you see, your son, he brought light, not just to me, to so many others. And he was a savior. But enough about me. Rachel, why don't you tell us how you knew him?
Well, you talked about how he brought light, and he did, but he also brought life. My husband is a synagogue official, Jairus, and he brought home news about this rabbi that people at the synagogue were talking about, and they didn't know what to make of him, and we weren't sure what to make of him either. He was healing people and teaching things that really helped people feel alive and loved and known. He was so welcoming to everyone. And one day, our daughter Naomi got very sick. She had a really high fever. And we prayed that God would relieve that fever, have that spirit leave her. And she was still sick. And my father, who's a very holy man, came, and the synagogue officials came. And my mother and my sisters and my friends and neighbors, we all prayed so much for this spirit to leave so that she would get well, and she just got worse. So Jairus and I, we talked quietly and said, we had heard that Jesus was across town. And we wondered about going and asking if he could come. And so Jairus did slip away and went to ask. And we were still, I was trying to cool her and comfort her, Naomi, but she stopped breathing. And our neighbors outside started wailing, and we were all just so distressed. And I sent a couple of people to go tell Jairus not to trouble the teacher any further. And then I heard something shift outside, and it seemed like he was there, and then people were laughing. He evidently had said she wasn't dead, that she was asleep, but I knew she'd not been breathing for a while. So he came in with a couple of his friends, and he asked everybody to leave, and except for me and my husband and his friends. And he said to my little girl, Talitha kum, little girl, get up. And she got up. I was just so shocked and so delighted, so filled with joy. I hugged her and held her, and he reminded us, give her something to eat. And we were just so overjoyed, and it was so wonderful for him to have entered our life in that way. And Jairus later said that when our friends came and said not to bother him further, that he just said not to worry, and he came anyway. I'm so grateful he came into our lives, and they killed him. I don't see how someone who conquered death and my little girl could be dead.
My son, the choice that I had to make in the beginning. I was a very young lady. The angel came to me, and I was told that I would be carrying the Son of God. But when the angel came, I accepted it. I told them, I will be the handmaid. You tell me what you want, and I will do it. I watched him growing up. As a young child, he was not like other children. He was very obedient. He listened. He followed what his father told him. I loved him very much. When we were going to Jerusalem for the Passover, we traveled with the rest of the families. I lost him, and it really, really, really destroyed me because I wanted to know, where was my child? Where is he? And when we went back to find him, there he was among the elders, talking to them, and they were very surprised at his knowledge and the things that he said to them. They just could not believe that these words were coming from this child. And we went to him and we said, Jesus, did you not know your father and I were looking for you? And he said, but did you not know I had to be at my father's house? And I knew then he was not mine. It was my job to just raise him and prepare him for his next role in life.
Oh, Mary, I know that you're hurting, but let me tell you the story about my brother Lazarus. Lazarus was one of Jesus' friends. He was there, and he had come to the house so many times. There was a time that Lazarus got really sick. And for 3 days, he just laid there. He couldn't get any better. So I sent one of the townspeople to find Jesus and to ask Jesus to come and heal him. And we waited a couple of days and he didn't come. So I sent a second person to Jesus to ask him to come, because my brother wasn't getting any better. And then he died. And I was so angry. And then somebody ran to tell me that Jesus was near the town. So I ran to him and I asked him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died.
What did he say?
Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. If you believe in me, you will never die.
Did you believe that?
I did to some extent, but I didn't,
How
and
could
I
you?
said to him, I said, Lord, I do believe that we will rise. Jesus said, where's Mary? And I said to him, she's at the house. And then I ran to get her.
I didn't want to go. I don't know why Martha sent someone for me. I didn't want to go. Jesus had been to the house I don't know how many times with Lazarus and I, and the time that we took, and we were all just very happy all together, learning and wishing and hoping that we could spend more and more time with him. And Martha would be preparing food all the time. I was just at his feet all the time. I was listening, I was learning. And it took him 3 days to come for my brother who was dead. I could not deal with it. I couldn't deal with it. I went to him, but I wouldn't look at him because I was still very much upset that he had not been there for Lazarus. And I was looking down when I approached him. And I would not look at him because I could only remember all of the wonderful times we had and why that wasn't something I could have with my brother now. He was gone. He was gone. I knew that if I looked at him, I was going to be more angry because he wasn't there to save my brother. And then I reached for him as he extended his hand. And I looked. I didn't want to look. And then I looked. And I didn't want to look. And then when I looked up at him, I felt such a calm. Because I knew that he was going to soothe me. That I would forgive him for not coming to save my brother. And then he said, he stood outside of the tomb, and he said to the people who were standing there, roll away the stone. And they rolled away the stone, and my eyes just kept looking. And then he called out to my brother, Lazarus, come out. And my eyes got big, and I saw motion from that rock. And there was my brother. He had come out. He was still wrapped in bandages. And he said, unwrap him, take the bandages off. And I just kept looking. And Lazarus was alive. Our sweet Jesus had brought him back to us. And I was so happy. And I was so filled with joy because all of the things that he taught me about believing and understanding God and his role with God and his son, and that he had come to this place with us to come back again. That wicked people would just try to destroy him, but they couldn't. They could not destroy him because he would be rising again, just like he had given Lazarus new life. And there was Lazarus standing at the top of that mountain. He was alive. He was alive.
It's amazing,
Oh,
isn't it?
he was alive.
Like with my daughter, when
He's
she was
wonderful.
born,
Jesus is wonderful.
But who's going to raise him? He raised your daughter. He raised your brother. Who's going to raise him? There's stories about resurrection. While the Christ lays in a tomb that we can't even visit tomorrow, the Sabbath. No one's going to roll his stone away tomorrow. God set him on that path. I remember after I was saved, there was a man who was consumed by demons. 4 people held him, and yet they were so strong that he still broke away. And as he ran towards Christ, he commanded them to leave. And that man dropped on the ground, and he saved him on the Sabbath. And I know, as I watched him, that he knew no one would come to save him. There'd be no miracle that day, no Messiah to raise him that day. And that's why I bought the jar, the alabaster jar. It was so beautiful. One of those that's meant to be broken. And I filled that jar with oil, and I brought it to him. And so I anointed him with that oil. And I prepared him that day just as he was already prepared. Just as he followed our Father's commands from the moment he was born and walked willingly into the faith, willingly to the cross. willingly to suffer and die for us. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm sorry. I shouldn't doubt. I won't doubt his resurrection, just as you didn't doubt your daughters or your brothers. I'm sorry, sisters. Perhaps in my grief I forget who he truly was.
Because of you, your fire lights the darkness. Because of you, living waters flow. Because of you, I know that I am light, candle burning brightly. Because of you. Because of you, I have a voice to speak. Because of you, I have all I need. I'm strong, I'm free. Because of you.